Well, welcome everybody. Gosh, I'm even getting my knickers in a twist already. Welcome everybody to today's IAPC&M, which we are very lucky to be holding. It is Valentine's Day. My name is Julie Kennedy. I am your host, and this is our IAPC&M CPD and Business Building Masterclass. So warm greetings and loving greetings, I will say today to you all. Today, we have the power duo by excellence with us, the truly amazing, and I really mean it, Nicki and Tony Vee, world famous from their couples educational programs with over two decades each of coaching. So that makes a pretty sizable number altogether. So first, a little bit of housekeeping. Our call today will be a maximum of 1 hour, including 15 minutes Q&A. The session is recorded, so please mute yourself, but keep your video on if possible, because it makes it so much nicer to see who we're talking to. Please feel free to use the chat box for questions and suggestions. And we will see, questions as we go along. If you wish, feel free to raise your hand. Tony and Nicki have said that they're happy taking questions as we go along. So on to our topic for today, and that is very appropriate on Valentine's Day: coaching the most difficult area of our lives, intimate relationships. So yes, I can say from personal experience. So grab your CPD pens, sharpen your ears, and over to you, Nicki and Tony.
Hey, well, thank you for joining us on this very special Valentine's Day. I don't know what makes it more special than any other, but we make a week of it. I always say, why would you have a day when you could have a week? So Nicki doesn't have a birthday; she has a birth week. So I think we should have Valentine's week. So yeah, and anyway, so obviously some of you be watching on catch up, so you may be watching not on the 14th. So yeah, it is. Why is it? What is it makes it? This the most difficult subject in our world to coach. We've coached obviously lots of different factors, but for me this is still the most difficult. And how do you get around that? How do you get around that difficulty? So I think we've got a few answers to that. I'll start with one of the key factors that makes it so difficult is not really the coaching element at all, but more the marketing element. Because actually, here's the challenge: if you're going to do couples coaching, you've got two people to sell to, not one. And you tend to be selling to them at a time. I mean, we always ask the question, on a scale of 0 to 10, where is your relationship right now? 10 being the best it can be and 0 being, ready to kill each other. They normally, by the time they've arrived at us, sadly, this is another thing that makes it difficult, they're down at a very low score. Nobody's come in that's a 7. They're all saying, oh, I'm a 4, I'm a 3, I'm a 2, or I'm a 1.
Or a minus.
Yeah. So this, of course, means that you have two people in quite a negative state of mindset that are reaching out, what I call in the emergency or the danger zone, when they're not communicating well at all. So it's like a double whammy. You're marketing to two different people, and then you've got to get these two different people to work together. And one of our most interesting things, Nicki will share, because she tends to take a lot of the phone calls, is when couples phone up, they all do the same thing.
They always say, hello there. They always say the same thing. They do not say, I'm ringing to, get some help on my intimate relationship. I realize I'm the problem, and can you coach me on that? They never, ever, ever say that. They say, I'm ringing about, yes, you've guessed it, my partner, they are not doing what I want them to do, or they are doing things I don't want them to do. And can you help me, open brackets, change them, close brackets? And so, of course, yeah, I agree with Tony. It starts right from the beginning for you as a coach, is that how are you going to position this so that, I agree with Tone, it's like they're in a very low negative state. The other thing I wanted to add, as I was hearing you say that, was that often one of them has already decided they're out. Okay. And I think that again gives us a situation where to even get them into the coaching situation can be quite difficult. So you might ask, just before we move on to other reasons why it's the difficult area of life, is that how do we overcome that? Because obviously there's been lots of people who have started to become intimate, relationship coaches who have not found it easy to get clients, so that they have gone on to something which perhaps is a little bit less contentious and a little bit less sensitive and a little bit less personal. But we find that by talking to them about what they're going through as a man or a woman, so to really talking to them as an individual, rather than just imagining that people are the same or that they're in the same place. And so we've often, our marketing or our we've just launched a program today, would you believe? And one of the things we say, in fact, one of the things that happens immediately if you click through to have a little look at our program, is that you get a screen with men click here, women click here. And that's something that we've been doing for a long, long time, right since our very first website, was we went, look, this is for men, this is for women, because one of the reasons why intimate relationships is a difficult subject is because society, pre-frame contentious thing coming up, society says that we're both the same. And it doesn't matter whether they're heterosexual or a same-sex, it doesn't matter. We are not the same. Men and women have a completely different needs and wants and everything in. So that's what makes it difficult. And the way we've overcome that first part is by talking to them as individuals, apart from other things that we might be able to share about marketing if people want us to go into detail about that.
Yeah, so, you do have these differences. So how are you going to overcome that and get them to part with their cash to have you coach them? Look, this is fraught with difficulty, and we've done everything we know. There's it is special because you're basically selling to two people and not to one. So a lot of the traditional marketing techniques that you may or may not have learned don't always work. Or
for example, we've never used discounting. We've never used, we've occasionally done something which might say this special price might be until the end of the month or something like that. But really, when you're talking to couples, especially people where they're going to go to one of our high-end programs, for example, where we need them both committed to it, we tend to use we don't use any sort of discounts or anything. But when we talk to people as individuals, we also encourage people to do our programs on their own, because what we found historically is that they'll join the program on their own, and then because I'm jumping here again, but because they get the learning themselves and therefore are interacting differently with their partner often, not every time, but often joins the program as well.
And roughly, just to give you some numbers for that, about where it's been almost impossible to get both of them on the same page to have some time or share some time or get them on the program, is probably about 10% of the time we've managed to get one of them. But actually this time round, this program that we've just launched, we call it the Ruby program, we're specifically saying that you can do it as an individual. Now, we've never tested this before, but actually we have seen the people that sign up as individuals actually have some good experience with learning the stuff themselves, even though their partner's not interested in joining in. In fact, we have one couple where the woman is very, very, let's call her proactive, and he's like whatever the opposite is. It's not reactive.
But he's not been told what to do, you see, so he resists.
Yeah, he's crazy. Very, very, very resistant. And it's quite amusing, really, because the other day, part of what has worked for us, let's go into that, and then I'll explain what happened for her, where he's been resistant. But one of the things that's worked very well for us is to not just do coaching, but to sort of sell or share what we call a program. You've heard us use that
like philosophy content
already. So yes. Instead of just plain coaching them, which, some of the people we've taught coaching through Master Coach, we have two friends who used to work with us on the Master Coach team. They both do coaching. They both struggle even more than we do, because they're only coaching the one person and they're only doing pure coaching. So actually creating a program which has got some philosophy behind it, it feels softer. So for example, we have made a series of videos. So we have a series of 12 videos, which take you, there's 2 videos that are like foundational. So if you create your foundational, like philosophy,
like your own unique philosophy,
your way that you see things, and it's got to be your way. I mean, you know, I'm always open to people doing it our way, but I go your way. If what's worked for you is a good thing to share. And then we've sort of covered all sorts of different common challenges. For example, one of the biggest challenges that couples face is money and how they deal with their money. Money, definitely big one. You've got things like intimacy, very delicate subject. How do you deal with that? You've got infidelity. That's a very
even more sensitive.
That's very super sensitive.
Families, in-laws, kids,
all
exes,
of these things.
You name it.
So in our program, we cover each of these things separately, and what we encourage people to do, which seems to work better than coaching them hardcore straight off, is to get them to watch, we call it a training video, so it feels less as though, you know, when people
they're
go
not
to,
in front of you, see.
when people go like counseling, we're in with relationship coaching, you're in competition with relationship counseling, massive, big time, because when they go to the doctor or they go to the church or they go almost anywhere, they'll recommend marriage guidance counseling or marriage counseling, whatever they like to call it. And of course, counseling and coaching, you know, we won't go into that today. Many of you know the strategic difference with that. But of course, either we get all of the people that have been to counseling that basically counseling doesn't work for, or, you know, relationship counseling per se does not really work because of the way you know, people have expected though, and that's part of our challenge of getting them to do something different. They expect to go and sit with somebody for an hour every Thursday night and have a chat with each other, and with the other person being the referee. Being
given the opportunity to say things that perhaps they haven't said to their partner, and so that they can have a go at their partner, and the partner has to go back, and then they go back the next week. And we have literally, and let's be honest, we've come across a lot of people that it hasn't worked for. Some that it has, because it's helped them get clearer and everything. But we've had a lot of people who have basically said that the problem was that they went away and went back the following week or something, and then there was no support. So another thing that we do, which really helps our clients, which hopefully would help your clients if you're in this area, or even in other areas, really, other difficult areas of coaching, is where you give them some support ad hoc between sessions. And that's why we've ultimately got to the point now where instead of doing a lot of very time-consuming training face-to-face or on Zoom, we give them what videos to watch, and then we do coaching on what they've learned from the videos, and then we obviously give them a chance to say what they've learned and what they're not happy about. So
they go through the program step by step. So
but then they also, I was just going to finish, they are given the opportunity to get in touch with us in between, because that's where they'll come to a coaching session. I'm sure everyone listening has had this experience, and we'll go through what's really challenging them, and then we'll get to this kind of agreement about how they might work, conversation differently or whatever we get to, and by the time they've got home, they've fallen over.
But this can be the same if we've even fallen into this trap of just talking to them because they won't watch the video. But what you end up with is a sort of like, they come to you, and of course our coaching strategy is called the V coaching strategy or the V relationship strategy. And we always say, look, the thing you have to avoid like the plague is what we sort of call, surface level coaching, which is they come to you with a presenting problem and you try to help them resolve that problem. But you see, we always have said, I'm sure I've said this on the IAPC&M before, it's a harsh statement, but the presenting problem that they come to you with is never, ever, ever the real problem. So as a coach, see, counsellors find it difficult to dig underneath. But if you've got really great coaching questions, you need to get to what we call the root or the bottom of the V, to get to the core or the issue that's at the bottom of the problem so that you can get them out of it. Now, because they haven't got an education, because nobody's been taught anything about relationships at school. They've not been taught anything about parenting at school. And they've not really been taught anything about how to handle family finances at school. So all of the things, they've not been taught intimacy. So all of the things we cover, which is why we call our program the Couples Intimate Relationship Education Program, is they have zero education on this oh so important area of life. And because once they've arrived at a very low score between them, showing them a video or a training is much more easy for them to have realizations about themselves. So instead of when you're in like a four-way chat and they're trying to make their point,
they're running their patterns, they're being defensive, they're whatever they are.
Yeah, you said, he said, she said.
Agenda going on between them because what we don't know. What
you've got is them sitting watching a training together. So now, if and obviously we are massively coaching in those training videos. We are asking questions all the time, but what you're managing to do is they can't answer back and they don't talk to each other. They're watching it, and we've got them with notes, and not that I'm a massive fan of notes, but lots of people are. I'm very dyslexic, but we've created like a notebook with loads of questions where they answer questions before the training and after the training. And of course, they take notes as they go along. So they're getting much more from it. And then after that, we then let them have some practice. So we're giving them practice time, and then we do a face-to-face session if they're on one of our higher programs. We have 4 levels of programs. So
yeah, so when we say practice time, by the way, we mean time to utilize what they've learned, try it, fall over, realize, having been taught or learned some of the coping strategies for when your partner behaves in a way that you don't like. There's a couple of things that I also want to mention, which you might be screaming out going, what about the single people? What are you talking about, the couples? And again, the same thing, probably from a marketing perspective, this is an easier to market because you're only talking to one person, but you still definitely need to appreciate that this is a very sensitive, this is definitely for men a very difficult thing to talk about because it makes them feel as if they are somehow not good enough as a man, which is their deepest wound. And also with women, that they might be just looking at it from a very surface thing, which is like, I've been on a load of dating sites and I now need some help with finding the right person. And they will have come across, without naming names, some of the authors that are very famous in this field, just basically give them tips on, like write a list of all the things you want in your favorite partner and all that, which is great. And, I probably got one in my loft somewhere of what I wrote about what was my favorite partner. But what we've learned over the years because we've been specializing in this subject for so long, we've really delved deep into the psychology behind why relationships don't work in the way that they do. So one of my answers to the question, why is coaching this difficult area of our life, is not only, as we've said, it's very sensitive, it's basically said it's the source of our greatest wound, it's the source of our greatest pain, because a lot of the time we have gone into a relationship, unless this is someone's first relationship, they've gone into a relationship and then it hasn't worked, and we have just thought as individuals that the other person is somehow not the right person for us. In which case we go into another relationship, do the same behaviors, strategies, beliefs, everything else, and we take it into the next relationship. And therefore many, many people have either been in multiple relationships, and that might be you listening now and thinking, why am I single still, or again, or people get so scared of going into a relationship that's going to be painful that they decide to stay single and all that thing. So that's another reason. But I think the ultimate reason, which most people don't think about, which I know as coaches you'll be thinking, well, that's obvious, but I think it's complex in this area, is that you bring to the relationship all your programming, all your significant emotional events, all your habits and patterns that are unconscious. And therefore, when you're coaching 2 people, or even one person if they're single, on why they're single or why they're having pain in relationships, you really are delving very deeply into everything about them that could be causing them to have a level of disconnection, this will be the reason behind pushing someone away from you, therefore like infidelity or lies or whatever. But it also might be that, you know, you have a very superficial relationship. When you look around, you know, people are always looking at other people's relationship and going, that looks perfect, when it clearly hardly ever is. But they look around and they think that there's certain sort of things you need to do as a man or a woman to be in a great relationship. And most of those ideas are fundamentally flawed. You know, we think that, for example, just to give you a quick example that I spoke to somebody about this week, is, you know, a woman thinking that if I go into a relationship and I'm financially sound and that, like, you know, I've got, you know, everything in place and I'll be a good partner to someone so that I'm not dependent in any way, which a lot of women are very frightened of being in any way dependent on a man because they think that's going to be unsafe. And that would be, for example, from our philosophy, the very thing that would be sort of unattractive to a man, if you like, because it would be, look, I'm an independent woman who doesn't really need anybody, and therefore, you know, let's be in a relationship kind of thing. So that, I mean, that's just one little example. But I think we're making it sound very, very complex. Of course, the absolute reward of being a relationship coach and of being able to, you know, get through the ups and downs of marketing and sales and to actually being in delivery is that if you are willing to be, as I will have said in previous IAPC&M masterclasses, where I said, you know, this is not for the faint-hearted. If you're going to be a coach that's willing to ask the tough question, that the other side of this particular firewalk, as I always call it, is what people have never, ever dreamed of. Like, we have couples come to us and say, we want to go back to how we were when we first met. And we go, well, we'll do our very best to coach you to go back there. But would you be open to the possibility that we might get you to a place you've never been, where it's actually even better than when you first met? So I think that's where we have stuck at it, even though we've been trainers of coaching as well with our Master Coach company. But we stuck at it because it's been so rewarding. Obviously, we're rare that we do it as a couple. But many times we said, what would happen if one of us decided to leave the planet? And we said we would both carry on, because obviously I've heard what Tony has to say and he's heard what I have to say about it for the last 19 and a half years. So I think we know all the examples.
I think, you know, when it's funny really when you hear, when it comes around to like a general election in the UK, I don't know, I know you're in Holland, but you know, I suspect it's similar there, is very often they'll try and pitch in their whatever they call, what do they call it? Manifesto, yes, that family values are very, very important. Now, I'm actually massively in agreement with that. And when a relationship breaks down, if you've got children, you're not just breaking up the relationship of the mum and the dad, you're breaking up the whole family. And there is a terrible stat, I think it's not a great stat personally, but anyway, that if you're a child of a divorced parent,
or even broken up, not married,
if they weren't married, if you're a child from a broken relationship, in other words, your mum and dad are no longer in a relationship, and obviously sometimes when that relationship's not healthy, maybe you're better out of it than in it. That's, you know, there's always some seriously dysfunctional relationships which perhaps are better not, but they're not the majority, they're the rarity. They're the ones that are always in the news, which is sad because it tends to imply that there's more of them when they're quite rare in the bigger scheme of things. But actually, when a family relationship breaks down, the child is, I believe it's 25% more likely to end up in a relationship that fails as well. So it doesn't sound a very big number, but you're massively lowering the chances of your children having a successful relationship, because as Nicki said, you know, the programming of your parents not being in a good relationship is having an effect on you as the child. And then as the child, you're taking not only society's sometimes challenging ideas as it moves down its journey of humanity, you're taking your own personal experience of your parents with you. And that makes it very difficult as well. So recently, we've been working with one particular couple where, as Nicki said, this is not easy. When we first connected with them, they were actually very difficult to get what I call over the line. In other words, to put money in our bank and we're going to get started. We had to work quite hard to get them to that point. But he'd already got his bag packed and he's gone. But he didn't want to break his family up. So we use a lot of leverage. So, you know, leverage in this sort of situation can be very, very powerful. So if you're not familiar with leverage coaching, which things like the GROW model don't teach. So if you've never learned any coaching outside of the GROW model, I encourage you to do that, where you'll learn what we call leverage coaching, which is you use questions which are really about the cost of you doing what you're doing. In other words, you leverage the pain of not getting it sorted out.
So
cost, remember,
consequences, ramifications, what's going to happen if you don't or you do?
Yeah, basically. So I remember, you know, talking to this guy, attempting, because look, we have a 100% belief that if they are both committed at a 10 out of 10 to resolve it, it is resolvable. Now, if they're not at least an 8 out of 10, the gap is too big. So we always go, look, we can't help you unless you're committed. You know, we're not miracle workers. We can work a miracle if, you know, because basically they don't know what they don't know. They haven't had the education. So we're going to give them the education, but they have to have the commitment because they're the ones who've got to do the doing. They're the ones who've got to live with each other. So they're the ones that have to put into practice what they're learning. So if they're not giving us a super high score on commitment, we turn them down because it's impossible to help them almost. But anyway, these guys were committed, even though he's got, you know, he's outside the door, so to speak. He's not living in the house. And he was committed because the leverage on him damaging his children was very high. These particular couple have got 3 young children, one, you know, 2, 7 and 9 or something along those lines. So very quickly with our first model, should we call it, in our philosophy, and we got them to move back in and got them working, because now instead of looking at each other and what they don't like, is, well, like we always say, the other person's always doing something you don't want them to do, or they're not doing something you do want them to do. That's the 2 scenarios. So of course what you tend to have happen is the person looking for them to stop doing it or start doing it. Well, of course our job is to get them to look at themselves. So our first training gets them to look at themselves. So in our V relationship strategy, the very first step is to look at yourself. So we are getting them to look at themselves. And this takes quite a lot of pressure off of them as a couple, because now you've got them looking at themselves. And when they're watching the video, they're not looking at the other person, and the old blame game that they've been doing for ages starts to lose its power a bit. And then they've got the philosophy, and then we get, if they're on, you know, what we call our Emerald program, then we get to coach them as well after that. So I think that leverage part is very, very important, and using the children as leverage, because they will not want to break the family up. It's like parents don't really want to do that. So you have got that as a tool in your toolkit if you're good at delivering leverage coaching, to get people that are, you know, not really wanting to, they want help, but they don't want help, if that makes sense. They've sort of only got half their hand up, you know, because they're frightened. They're basically frightened it is going to be their fault, and they don't want it to be their fault. So, and that's what happens in counselling. What I hear is people walk out of counselling and then they go back straight into the blame game, because the counsellors don't necessarily manage to get them out of the blame game while they're there. And then they've got to wait another week before they go back again. So the amount of people that have 1 or 2 counselling sessions and never go back is unbelievable. Well, that's in my opinion anyway. And then even if you use that strategy of once a week coaching, which we don't recommend and why we're sharing about the program, if you do that, you've got to keep finding new clients. You've got to keep feeding your marketing machine to get more people into your world so that you can earn a living as a coach. And obviously everybody wants to do that. So selling a program, a higher price program with a time frame on it, makes way more sense. And if you've got your philosophy in there, and then you can do upsells, so to speak, which includes time with you, then that's a better way to go about it. And it's a better way to get around the fact that it's difficult to get the two people. And of course, we're now going to be testing this year how much easier it is to get one person and then see if we can get the other, which is, I'm going to close that loop, where we've got this couple on and we've got the highly interactive, determined woman and the resistant man. It's taken me ages to get her to stop trying to get him to do what you don't want him to do, what you do want him to do, and stop doing what you don't want him to do. Leave him alone and let him do his own thing. He is watching the program. The funny thing is, when I asked him at one point, I wouldn't normally ask him this, but there was one point I'm going, I'm not sure we can help this couple. They've said they're fully in and committed. And I said to her, so look, how well out of 10 is this program working for you? And she said about a 4 out of 10. But you see, the reason she's given a 4 out of 10 is because she's still, even though we've done everything to try to make sure, she's still saying, well, it's not working because he's not doing it properly.
He's going, it's a 10 for me.
He's going, it's a 10
He's
for
gone,
me.
I'm really learning a lot, and I'm actually trying my best to put it into practice. So it was very, very interesting.
It was very, very interesting. But the other day, they're on a training number 5 at the moment. Yes, they've been with us like 4 months and they're now arrived on training number 5. And she's done everything she can. She's got it in the diary. She's put it in his diary. They're going to be watching it Sunday morning. And of course, he does not turn up. So now she's watching it on her own, but we're encouraging her to watch it on her own. So these are ways around it. But funnily enough, he eventually sort of sloped in and sat down with her and watched it. So she was surprised because I've said to her, whatever you do, don't remind him. It's in his diary. He knows. If you remind him, he'll, men, that we've often used the example, if you're driving with a man, this is not a good thing, by the way. If you're driving and the man's driving and you think as a woman he's going too fast and you say, could you slow down, please? Look, the number one thing a man is likely to do is likely to go faster. Now, that might seem evil and bad and men are terrible creatures. But if we understand the psychology behind why men do that, then it's better not to activate that, because you could tell him 1,000 times to slow down and it won't work. So with relationships, you've got to find out and learn what does work and start doing that. Not thinking that, well, okay, if I keep pressing that button, it should work, but it's not working and he should be listening to me. Then actually that is your problem. You've got to find some new ways of communicating because men do not do well with that type of communication. So you've got to learn how to talk to him so that he cares about you a bit more and drives a way that meets your needs. And that can be done. So I do believe that, all of this and having this philosophy, should we call it, of what's worked for you in your relationship, if you've been successful. And, why would you be teaching relationships or helping people with relationships if your relationships are a disaster? We do use our previous relationships because we had, a lot of years of not doing this well. And then we did what we are suggesting people do. We got an education on what we were doing that was not working and then put that into practice. And then the universe threw us together, basically. And that's how we ended up carrying on. In fact, somebody said to us, could you come to do a talk, funnily enough, in Dublin at the time? Because, and Nicki said to, what do you want us to do a talk on? And, coaching or whatever it was she was doing at the time. And she said, oh, no, I want you to come talk about your relationship because you seem to have such a great relationship. So, you've got to be, you've got to walk the talk. So, look, if you're rubbish at relationships, then don't even bother, to find out what you're good at and coach that, because, you're going to let yourself into a very difficult situation if you don't have, good stories, good experiences that you could share, that you could make into sort of your own philosophy, really.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think the best way to override some of the difficulties of this subject and really get to the benefits of being a relationship coach, because it's unique. There's hardly any relationship coaches about, good ones anyway. And, that you can make a very nice living out of being a relationship coach if you understand the subject in the way that we've been explaining. And the sort of added benefit is that because, one thing that people, what do you call it when you fall down a hole? One mistake, one thing that a lot of people do, which I can absolutely tell you would be, not a good thing to do as a relationship coach. And that is to try and get kind of testimonials, references. What we tend to do is we get permission to tell the story of what they were struggling with before they met us, but we nearly always use false names. And we make it very clear on our website that the reason why we use false names is this is a very private subject. This is a very sensitive subject. There's a lot of people that would not want the world to know, if I'm not saying the world looks at our website, but it would be nice if it did. But like, they don't want the world to know about their private things, because it's about a lot of couples or a lot of people are very, feel very unsafe to share about, especially intimacy issues and things like that. So we don't fall down the trap of, trying to we don't do any of those offers where we say, we'll do it for you and then you give us a testimonial or something like that. We don't do any of that. So, but we do get a lot of referrals. But the first, again, the thing that mistake that people make is they sometimes, I can't tell you how many times I've said to someone, how did you hear about us? And they said, we were recommended by a friend. And in the early days, I would say, which friend? Somebody we know. And they go, I'd rather not say, please. Or they'll say a name that we've never heard of because they've only been on a program maybe where they haven't had any time with us. So you will get a lot of referrals. I think the biggest thing to remember is a couple of things, just to because I can tell we're running towards the end here, is to absolutely learn as a coach how to keep confidentiality. Now, I know I'll have spoken about this on many masterclasses that I've done for IAPC&M, but the confidentiality to the point, and this might sound extreme, that one of the couple might tell you something that you cannot share with the other person in the couple. They're telling you that so that you can work and delve into it. But they actually, if you started sharing that with the other part of the couple, that would be not good. And also, obviously, clearly not to share with anybody else, least of all the person who's recommended them or whatever. The other thing that I think is really important, and Tony's touched on it a little bit, is the use of leverage. And he also touched on finding an elegant way, I love that word as a coach, finding an elegant way to ask people, not to make them wrong when they keep trying to tell you about their partner, but finding an elegant way to have them have a look at themselves. And one of the ways that we do that is by giving them statistics. And we say, look, in the UK, divorce statistics are, almost 50%. But here's the frightening one, is that second marriages fail at 75%. And third marriages fail at 85%. So here's the fundamental here. People are leaving a relationship and going into another one, taking their, I nearly said shitty patterns then, but yeah, go on, I'll say it. Shitty patterns, behaviors, strategies, and beliefs into the next relationship, expecting it to work because they've chosen somebody, they always say, completely different than that first person or the person before, and finding they're having very similar problems. And we have people say, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. We go, have you ever had that happen in a previous relationship? And they say, no. And then about 10 minutes later, they'll go, oh yeah, well, I think that was what happened with my first, my previous marriage or whatever. So first of all, this finding elegant coaching questions, anybody that knows the Master Coach V coaching questions, the 7 questions that we use. I think actually I gave them to Dawn to put on the last masterclass, but happy to put them on again for you today. These are just questions that, yes, include leverage questions like, what's going to happen in the future if you don't get this handled, but what does this mean? Whereas a lot of coaches will think that what's going to happen if you don't get this handled means this problem. But if we absolutely believe in the fundamental of coaching is that the presenting problem called my relationship's not working the way I want to, or I'm still single or whatever, is the presenting problem. We're not asking the question, what's going to happen if you don't get that handled? We're asking the question, what's going to happen if you don't get your pattern that's giving you that experience handled? And that comes from, again, use of cause and effect questions. Now, not many coach trainers teach coaches to use cause and effect questions because it's tough. Because basically they're questions for people that might be feeling like, I'm good, he's bad, or I'm the victim of his behavior or her behavior, right? In which case, what those great coaching questions can be are things that help people see that staying in the victim of somebody else's behavior leaves them in learned hopelessness. We actually used that today on a coaching call, didn't we? You know, people are going to learned hopelessness, and they'll even ask for coaching for you to give them strategies to have a better relationship without being willing to look at themselves. So some of those questions are, you know, would you be open to the possibility that you're not handling this problem as well as you could be? How have you co-created this situation with you and your partner is one of my favorite questions. And so I think being an excellent, we call it world-class coach, is vital if you're going to coach relationships, because as we said in the title, it's a difficult area because it's sensitive and everybody thinks it's, you know, somebody else's problem, somebody else is the problem, but also that it takes you to be quite brave with your coaching to really get them to have somebody saying they're dashing. Right. So, yeah. And
wow.
Any questions, Julie?
I mean, I'm just like, I mean, it just makes so much sense what you're doing. And I mean, I always, you know, thought of it as a difficult area because, of course, there are two people, and it's, you know, even if both are on board, sometimes they say they're on board, but then you come across
absolutely.
all these different things that they're not having. But it just made so sense. I mean, from the mudslinging of the counseling, which I've experienced myself, to you know, not taking responsibility to it. He has to change. You know, you go to your coach because they want you to change him, not themselves.
Yeah.
And getting them to look at their own stuff, to things I thought, to be honest, I'd never even thought of it that way, but the leverage of the children is that often that is the one thing that they do still have in common, is the love for the children and the desire for the children to have the least.
Or the leverage of what's going to happen for you in the future if you don't get this.
Well, actually, we have one couple, and this is a common modern problem, which is, again, it's a sad state of affairs out there for, you know, the movement of humanity towards us being the same is a massive mistake in society thinking that, because people don't, you know, look, it's a good logical idea. I just go, look, in the head, it makes a lot of sense, but the reality of it and the consequences are horrendous. So, for example, we have a couple right now who they are one of them is in a second marriage. So they've got children in the first marriage, and then they've got children in the second marriage. So that already is an added massive degree of difficulty in making a relationship work. And then the other partner's got no children from a relationship before, but now because these children are young, they're living in their house. So, you know, if you think about how the courts sort out a divorce, they tend to, but even if they give 50-50, which is what a lot of people want, they don't tend to do that. They tend to give 80-20 or somewhere in between. That means that as a percentage of the time, those children are going to be living with you, and they're not your children.
Right.
If you're that partner. And then you've got your own children's interaction with the other children. So, and then
upbringings, often I experience that a lot, different upbringings, you know, where I'm in a very global world. So, I mean, it's very frequent that the two are not of the same nationality and are probably living in a third country as well. And I find that all the things which don't seem to matter much when it's just you two suddenly matter an awful lot more when there are children.
A lot more. And of course, you're now parenting somebody else's child.
Children, right?
And this is very, very difficult. So I think, you know, this is why it's very fulfilling when you help a couple stay together. and you help them see what they're doing that's not working, both individually and together. And you sort of, like, I see it as saving the family.
Of course,
You know,
and that is how it should be, right? I mean, I'm
of
from a
course,
divorce, and thankfully it was an amicable divorce, and we are
yes,
close, and we've created a patchwork family. But still, you always grieve. It's never going to be the same, even if you're
it's
very
difficult.
happy in your new relationships. There's a feeling of completeness which isn't there. So it is something that you stay with. I had a question also. We're talking about 2 decades, and I was just thinking on as well that society and would I say values have changed? I don't know. Yes, in a way, values have changed. I think before, people were prepared. Well, perhaps first of all, women were prepared to put up with perhaps a bit more. Think back and think, lie back and think of England, sort of thing. Okay, thankfully that part has changed. But however, there is perhaps a faster trigger to say, okay, I've had enough. I don't get everything that I want in life now, so that's him out the window. And how do you? Have you then had to adapt completely how you coach regarding how society sees relationships and fidelity?
Well, yeah, that's interesting, really, because we are accused, sometimes at our talks, which we don't do so many nowadays. Always open to being invited, by the way, to do talks. It's on our website, because actually having somebody do a talk to a group can really help many people in that group, because they're sitting, listening. They're sitting passively, so they're getting coached. Right? Yeah. And I think, it's actually a good way for a coach to get started, is to run groups, because the people can sit passive, and then, they will move towards you if they like your style and your presentation, and they think you've got something about you. So, we're massive fans of speaking on the stage and doing groups. People can hide a little bit.
Yes.
So what were we saying? I've forgotten what we said. Oh, society. So the thing is, we were accused sometimes of being a bit old-fashioned, and they sort of talked about us being a bit 50s in our thinking, i.e. lay back and think of English,
and all
that sort of stuff. But you see, I always say, no, we're much older than that. We go back to caveman times, because there's an innate part of us. There's an innate part of us that's like the animal part of us that is still active. Funnily enough, we created an exercise to demonstrate this. So when we're in a group, we always have a lot of fun doing this demo, which we can't do now. But that's the sort of thing I would encourage you to do, is to create exercises where people get a learning.
They get the feeling of what it feels like. So
people by doing this exercise, they got a sense of this part of them, which is sort of switched off because of modern society.
It was literally, I can just put it in like a nutshell. It was because we used to do it live. It was an exercise where we got a man to stand with a woman just behind him, kind of thing, so she's safe. Like in caveman times, when he'd find the cave and where she could be safe. And then we'd have them standing next to each other, which is like very much like nowadays, where you're both fighting the wildebeest, or what, not wildebeest, tigers or whatever it is. But then, we have the woman slightly in front. And of course, what we've always explained is that the reason why we believe in that, going back to that nature, is because it's the we were speaking on the stage with John Gray at one time, and he wrote a fabulous book about the chemicals of masculinity and femininity. And basically you've got women operating in adrenaline and testosterone, and men who are possibly because it's a good idea, which is why a lot of counselors or coaches sometimes just give good ideas. So they go, well, like if you're earning more money and you're having a child, well, then he should stay at home and look after children. Of course, it's practical, but then we've coached so many couples where he just then doesn't feel like in any way his purpose in life is being fulfilled. And she's got the stresses and strains of being the provider thing. So a lot of what we talk about is very contentious in this day and age. But look at the consequences.
What's interesting is we do have our nice new King Charles III. And when he was Prince Charles, he wrote a co-authored a book called Harmony. And it's a very expensive book because it comes hard copy and it's a big book. But you don't have to get far in before you realise that he has studied all of his life. He's over 70 now, and he's been brought up obviously in a privileged way. But much of his thinking has taken him to a point where he realizes that humans have moved away from nature. And if you move away from nature, there is always a consequence. Nature doesn't have what do they call it? A pause of vacuum. So basically it fills that in. So what you're seeing with modern society's movements, and where, we really confront that, because obviously the divorce thing, as you said, is more, people are quick to jump to it. But part of that, of course, is the logic of the British Parliament. I don't know how this works around the world, but they changed the divorce laws in the 1990s and made it more easy to get a divorce. You could get what they called a quickie divorce, and actually that means that people are, getting rid of their relationship. It's a bit like they swap in a car. This car's worn out, let me go and get a new one. I go, look, that's the consequence of making it more simple to get a divorce means that more people are divorced, and the knock-on effect is you got more. You called it a patchwork family. I like that. We tend to use the language blended, but they are traditionally more difficult, unless, like you say, look, you've been in the coaching world, so you're more capable, able, self-aware. And you've got an amicable situation, but trust me, divorce courts are full of people that are not being amicable with each other, and then they bring all that animosity into the next relationship. So yes, we are a bit old-fashioned, and it might seem sometimes that we're going back to 50s values, but we're not really. We're going, look, it's the nature of the human that we are never going to change. You can change it logically, and you can try it out, and you'll see in a generation that the challenge is that changing the rules, like marriage 30 odd years now, they changed the rules that sort of 25, 30 years ago. You can see the knock-on effect of that, and it's not pretty. It's really not pretty. And so
also what you were saying, about people being the same, because then it becomes dangerous, because you think you should be feeling that way. Just personally, I remember very well when we were living in, I think it was Cameroon, and I'd given up my high-flying job to have my first child. And of course, we were so in a diplomatic circumstance, and he was off doing his meetings and all of that. And then I worked freelance for the ministry as well, and I could go on a business trip too. And at first I couldn't. And I was so angry because he could put aside the fact, and that I was just too conscious of the fact that I was leaving a 3-month-old baby in Black Africa with, no family anywhere nearby. What happens if something happens to me? And I was feeling angry at him because of the fact that he could let go of his parent part, whereas for me it was so deeply ingrained, it was going against my career and all my personal stuff.
This is the mother, the mother and the father.
When you accept that, right? When you accept it and you see it as something actually beautiful, that we all fulfill our different purposes, that does not mean that one is above the other. That does not, we are good at different things, that as long as there's the harmony within this all, then it can work.
But of course, you've also got the modern challenge of the money. This is why money challenges,
practical thing,
because look, the need for money is not decreasing, and because we've created, humans, with their capitalist thinking, and Churchill famously said that capitalism is the worst system humans ever devised. But the challenge is it's better than all the rest. Right. Which is an interesting way. Churchill's great with his sayings, and it's true, because look, as we march forward, particularly in the Western world, we've got the North America, and then you've got the whole of the European Union. It's like 1 billion people are all linked one way or the other to money. So and they're linked, then the capitalist way is materialistic. So we're looking for things outside of ourselves. We buy things, a bigger house, a bigger car. We want all the things inside of it to find the happiness we seek, when actually your relationship can bring you more joy, more love, more of anything you've ever wanted, than anything materialistic. But we're on that train. So, society has got us on that train. So in today's world, I really feel for the youngsters when they're trying to get on the housing ladder, shall we call it, And then, like you said, look, you've got a young baby maybe, or you want a child. Look, one of the consequences that the childbearing age of mothers has radically gone up the scale.
Yes.
People's age of getting married because they don't have enough money to buy a house and all of that sort of stuff, or they've got to be very, very like hard workers or skilled or whatever it is to be able to achieve that. So the consequences of the chase for money and materialism has on the family is huge. So I think, again, you go, right, well, what do we need to do early on? And that's why we quite like coaching, young couples that are in that situation where you go, well, as a couple, how are you going to develop this relationship so it's a win-win, a win for you, win for me, win for us, and then a win for our family, so that they experience the best versions of us as their parents. And I do believe in the modern world this is tough, but looking at the values and saying, look, money is not God. If you make money your God and you put your relationship way down the list, in fact, every time we coach any couple with any relationship challenge, one of the key problems is that they've put the relationship so far down the list of things that are important that no wonder it goes wrong. You see, anything you put at the top of level of importance for you as an individual or as a couple, you're going to get better at that because you're spending more time thinking about it, working on it. So if you put money there, yes, you can get a load of money if you work your ass off, educate yourself, whatever that takes. And then you've got two people. But what we tend to do is we then want to buy a bigger house, a bigger car, a bigger, things until we've got a swimming. And then you've never really got the spare money, you say, you've got to work to keep creating it. This takes so much of your energy that then your relationship's not getting. So, call us old-fashioned if you will, but bringing it back to some values where you are fulfilled as individuals, as a couple, as a family. I don't think that's old-fashioned. I think that's nature and that's common sense. So,
and I think it would have a huge impact on society if there were more relationship coaches, and if there was a lot more of a drive towards it being, we would have a much more peaceful world. We'd have a lot more content people, a lot less burnouts, physical issues, etc. Because you can't.
But you've got to, I think, as Nicki said, you've got to be brave and you've got to tackle it from a philosophical viewpoint rather than trying to fix, like, she said that I don't like.
Yeah, don't allow the practical, superficial stuff to affect you as a coach, so that you start giving advice or or saying, well, why don't you try this or whatever. I mean, one of our, big things is to teach couples and teach people to love the differences between men and women and appreciate and respect the different needs we have and all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of really great stuff.
It broadens our horizon, right? Being with people like us, we don't really learn anything, do we? We're just the same. But it's just to have that curiosity of, oh, interesting. I didn't see it that way. What made you think this?
That's right. And that's why, obviously, as you can see, we're getting into our what does the Churchill say, the autumn of his years.
The autumn of your
and
life.
So we have spent the last 12 to 18 months putting all our content onto legacy programs, that with Master Coach and with our couples intimate relationship education program, we also have a program for single women called Let Him Find You.
Which is applicable at all ages.
The most recent program, the one that we're launching today, if you don't mind us saying, is our Ruby intimate relationship program. And it is really for singles or couples or person in a relationship whose partner's not ready to what we call handle what's happening. It's literally an educational program, and we feel like if we can get as many people, we've made it very reasonably priced, and if we can get more of those out there to the world, that the world will be a different place.
I agree.
Because it's so sad to think that there's so much pain.
And what's great about the new program, which we've sort of dipped our toe in the water and people seem to like it, is it's what we call a self-study program. So you know,
It
our
doesn't have any-
coaching is all in the program. Yeah. So we
You
don't
don't need to actually have time with us
You don't need
as
to
any
have time with
extra
But how
It's
expense.
wonderful
well-
that you've taken all of this and your legacy.
So
And
we're
you
going, when
have-
we're dead and gone, somebody
Yes.
else will have it on there.
You'll still make the world a better place after that as well.
hopefully that's what we want
Well,
to
I will
try
personally
and-
be in touch with you because I run a podcast called Fabulous After 50. And I think
Oh,
that's also
right.
something which would be absolutely fantastic for me to have. We have reached the end of this, and I'm infinitely grateful for everything that you have so openly and candidly shared. I mean, it's clear that you live and breathe all of this. You know, you've put it into practice, and you are this wonderful, glowing. I mean, I just love the way that even, you know, you interrupt each other, but with respect. And it's not taken badly, as in I don't see the other one going like, "Hey, I was talking, you know, be quiet." There's this beautiful.
We've got used to each other now.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic to see how that does work. You know, that you can both be lively and you can both be passionate about what you're doing, but without getting into each other's way, but actually enhancing each other. So thank you very, very much for being with us here today. I hope those listening have made as many notes as I have. I've got notes all over the place. Please look up the V's programs. I would love it if you could share those 7 questions again. I'm sure Dawn already has, but let's add them to this one as well. Anything we can do to make this world a better place. And thank you very much. There's been some nice thank yous coming up here online as well. And thank you for listening in to all of those listening to us on Facebook Live. Please make sure to write everything down in your CPD logs because we think we're going to remember this. It's impossible to forget such nuggets, but we do. So write them down now. I wish you all, including, and then especially you, the V's, a wonderful Valentine's Day today. Of course, every day is
Thank you.
Valentine's Day. But loads and loads of love then from me to you all. Thank you.
And well, thank you for inviting
Yes,
us. We've
thank you.
enjoyed every
Huge
second.
And good
Pleasure,
luck
as
to all the
always.
coaches. You know,
Yes.
you're doing an amazing job helping make
Don't
difference.
give up. Whatever you
Yeah.
do, don't give up. It's just, you know, it's the greatest job in the world.
Yes.
Ah, beautiful. And the world needs us. So that's it.
Yes.
Take
Definitely.
care.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.